this is my playground. I love everything on the outside, and I really love everything on the inside. So what we're going to do is look at how these segments, because what we have to do is make sure that what we put into the horse's GI tract is beneficial so that they can utilize those nutrients to perform a job, whether that job is to make us happy or to win a race or to place well at a horse show, right? So what we put in there determines how successful we might be. So just a background, the horse's stomach is, after we chew it up, it's the first place that our feed stuff is going to stop. We'll be in there for a little while. The stomach empties when it's about 2/3 full, whether it's completely digested or not. This is the first part of chemical digestion. All the hydrochloric acid in the stomach starts to break down that feed stuff. And then it goes into the small intestine, which is about 70 feet in length. Everybody think about how big your horse is? You think about shoving 70 feet of small intestine in there. The horse's total GI tract from the esophagus all the way to the business end is around 100 feet. So regardless of size, it's very, very large. But 70 feet of small intestine does the majority of the horse's work with the grain and the concentrate that we put in there. The hind-gut, which is from the cecum on back, which is very similar to the digestive tract of the cow. The horse's cecum would be the equine version of the rumen, okay? And that cecum on through to the large colon is where we digest forage. We have lots of microbes and bacteria in the cecum and the large intestine, and that breaks down that forage and produces a product called volatile fatty acids, and that's what's utilized by the horse. Because the horse actually can eat all the grass at once, but if we didn't have microbes in the hindgut, we wouldn't be able to utilize any of it, because our animal can't break that cell wall of the forage. So basically, we put that fiber in there to maintain gut motility, but we also use that as food for the bacteria, and then that bacteria produces food for the horse. So we want to make sure that we feed the bacteria so that we can feed the horse. Okay? So, with that really quickly, what's on our bag? Everybody knows there's a name, right? Product name. What else is on the feed bag?
Percent protein.
We have guaranteed analysis, so that includes protein. What else? Anybody?
My bag tells me how much to feed.
Feeding directions. What else might be on there? Ingredients. Anything else?
Sometimes they'll label it like lactate mineral.
So what type of animal it's formulated for. Okay, those are all things that are supposed to be on the bag. And every feed manufacturer is required by AFCO, which is the American Association of Feed Control Officials, to put certain things on their products, whether it be the bag or the tag. We can add, as a feed company, more than what we have, but by law we're required to list a specific amount of information. So the first thing is the brand name and the product name. So that would be Buckeye Nutrition Grow and Win, or Buckeye Nutrition Safe and Easy, Nutrina Safe Choice, or those are brand name and a product name. Okay, then we have to have a purpose statement, and that purpose statement is supposed to give you an idea of what animal that product would be best suited for. So if you have one that says for mature horses, it's more ideal for those horses that are 5 years of age and older, that are done growing. If you look on the breeding products, they're going to say for growing horses and lactating or gestating brood mares, right? How many of you have breeding horses? Do you have brood mares? Okay, if you look on those, if you're feeding products that are specific to those animals, it will be listed in that purpose statement. Then the next thing that we have to have on there is the guaranteed analysis. And everybody's pretty familiar with that because when you go into the feed store, you say, I want a 12% crude protein sweet feed, right? Or 14%, okay? That guaranteed analysis tells me, as a consumer, what the minimum or maximum of those listed ingredients would be in that product. So AFCO says that I have to have crude protein minimum, crude fat minimum, crude fiber maximum, calcium min and max, phosphorus minimum, and then some of our copper, zinc, selenium, and then a couple of our vitamins. Okay, so those are the things that we have to have on there. Then, after the guaranteed analysis comes the list of ingredients. And we'll spend some more time on list of ingredients in just a minute, but that should tell you what is in that product. Okay, it's typically listed in highest inclusion to lowest inclusion rate, but for horses, it is not required. Some companies will do that. My company does that. Listed highest inclusion rate to lowest inclusion rate. Pet food is required by AFCO to put that in highest to lowest inclusion rate. But livestock feeds, which is where horses fall into, they aren't required by AFCO to do that. Most of the companies try to do that because they know that you're used to thinking about that in that particular fashion, highest to lowest inclusion rate. Then we have directions for use, and then any warning statements. So this is where my feeding directions come into play. If I'm feeding, if you look on your feed tag or your feed bag, it's usually a table that says if your horse weighs X amount of pounds, feed 4 to 7 pounds or 10 to 12 pounds, right? We kind of, how many of you actually read the feeding directions? That's what, trust me, I know how many of you read them, because then you call me, and I'll be like, okay, Miss Kathy, are you feeding 2 pounds of growing wind? Well, no, I just fed 1.5 pounds today. Well, Miss Kathy, did you know Magnum's not going to get all of his essential amino acids, vitamins, and minerals because you didn't feed him according to my directions? Yes, I know that, but it's like the whole Tylenol principle, right? You have a headache, it says take 1 every 6 hours, right? But you can take 2 the first time, and how many of you take 3? Because I got a monster headache, right? That's how we feed our horses, I know that. I've been in the horse business a long time. I still have to call home because I have 3 semesters of college tuition in the pasture in Oklahoma, and I have to call my mom and I say, Mom, feed this horse 1.5 cans. Feed this horse 3/4 of a can, and feed this horse 2 cans, right? Because if I tell her, feed Diva 4 pounds, feed Annie 5 pounds, and feed a little bit 2.5 pounds, she's going to get all upset because she sent her kid to college and now they're being all smart, you know? So I have to bring it back to scoops or coffee cans. But at some point, I weighed that coffee can and I know how much that is, okay? So we put these feeding directions on there for a reason, and then we also put any warning or caution statements on there. How many of you have sheep? Anybody have sheep in here? Okay. Usually, sheep are the ones that get in trouble if they eat horse feed, because we put a lot of copper in our horse feeds because horses need copper, right? Sheep don't like copper. In fact, they like it so much they die. And so we have to put those warning statements on there, contains added copper. And so just so that we can make sure that we don't misuse that product, okay? And then the last two things that we have to have on there from an AFCO guideline standpoint is the name of the company and where it's located. And then we have to tell you how much is supposed to be in that bag. If I say net weight 50 pounds, there better be 50 pounds in there. Because if there's 49 and a half, I'm going to get in trouble for cheating you out of a half a pound. Or if I put 51 and a half, then I'm giving you a pound and a half extra that you didn't pay for. So I'm losing money. But we're required by law to tell you how much should be in that bag. Okay? And that's one of the things that you really have to pay attention to, because we've started a bunch of feed companies are changing the size of their bags now. So you might have our standard 50-pound bag, and then some companies are putting them in 40s, 45, 42 and a half pound bags. So make sure you know how much you're buying and do the math so that you can keep track of, is that still a good deal or not. Questions on that? Are we good? So now, I'm going to talk, this is kind of, we didn't really talk about this when I was in school. I knew about it, but I didn't know about it until I went to school. How many of you have heard of least cost formulas versus fixed cost formulas? Anybody? Nobody. Okay. So we have a winner in the back. All right. Least cost formulas are simply that, meaning I can change them anytime I need to maintain a constant price. Fixed formula means exactly that. It is not going to change bag to bag to bag. Okay? Least cost formulas let us adjust on commodity prices. So when corn goes through the roof, on a least cost formula, I can substitute another raw material in corn's place to bring the cost back down. Okay? On a fixed formula, that tells me I'm going to have oats, ground corn, wheat midds, whatever else in there. And when oats goes through the roof, I have to buy oats through the roof. Hopefully I have a good commercial guy that's got good contracts in for me. But because I put that on my ingredient or on my bag as the first ingredient, I have to put that in there in the highest inclusion rate. Okay? I've made a big commitment that says I'm going to use the same ingredients, the same amount, every time I make that product, regardless of price, because I'm focused on nutrition of that product. Okay? So let's look at it a little bit more closely. So some benefits to least cost: remains the same price, and takes out that fluctuation within the commodity markets. The drawback is I can have different ingredients, bag per bag, or different amounts of those ingredients, bag per bag. So if I had a horse that was sensitive to laminitis, okay, and I had a product that was supposed to be low starch and sugar, so it didn't have a lot of corn in it to keep the price down, or to keep the starch and sugar level down. And it was a least cost formula, and corn went up, so I substituted, or oats went up and I substituted corn in there for that laminitis horse. Would that increase in corn be a problem? Yeah, that means I got more starch in that bag. So if I have a horse that's sensitive to laminitis, that could be an issue. And so that's one of the drawbacks, is that we differ a lot of times bag for bag or run for run. Yes.
Is that listed on the bag that they're using the least cost?
I will show you. No, it doesn't say, woohoo, least cost formula. And there's some tricks that we're starting to see now too, and I'll get to that in the next slide. But for fixed formulas, the benefits, same ingredients, bag for bag, run for run. So the same formula and safe and easy is going to be used from now until I improve it later on, okay? The drawbacks of fixed formula, which we've already talked about, is that raw material prices, increases or decreases, can impact the cost to the end user. So when I have to raise my price 10 cents a bag or 20 cents a bag, that's not because I want more margin. It's just because I have to cover some costs. It just says the raw materials increase or decrease. Most companies will pass that increase or decrease onto their end user or to the dealer that buys. Some companies don't. Some just keep putting it in their pocket. But most of the time, you will see that as commodities come down, those prices are going to reflect that usually. So, how do I know if it's fixed or not, right? That was the question. Check your bag. Is it tagged, or are the ingredients listed on the bag itself? How many of you buy feed that has a tag on it? Okay. How many of you buy feed that has the feed ingredients printed on the bag? Miss Kathy does. Okay. We have to have that GA listed and those ingredients listed on the bag. If it's not on the bag, it has to be on a tag. Which one of those do you think is easier to change? Tag, right? Do you know how much it costs me on average to do a run of bags? If I wanted to make some Grow and Win bags, I've committed to investing a minimum of $10,000 to print those raw materials, those ingredients, that GA on the back of that bag. That says I stand behind that set of raw material and that set of nutrient delivery, okay? It is easier for me to print. I have some products that don't have a high enough volume to warrant me spending that amount of money, and so those are tagged. But there's another way that you can tell if it happens to be a tagged product, whether it's likely to be a lease cost versus a fixed, okay? So let's look. Here is an example of a bag, or the ingredients off of a bag. I didn't have all of them, but most of them. I have grain products, plant protein products, processed grain byproducts, molasses products, roughage products. Okay? Does that throw any bells or whistles off, alarms?
It's not specific.
Not specific.
What is all that?
Those are what the industry calls collective terms. And AFCO says it's okay for us to use collective terms. It's okay. And there's a list of things that we can use within those collective terms. Okay? And because I say grain products, I have a section of grain products, and I can substitute in or out frequently those particular raw materials and still be held accountable to my feed label. Okay? So let's look. Grain products. I can use corn, barley, oats, wheat, or rice. Okay? As long as it's still the first ingredient, that tag is still right because it says grain products. I can use any combination of those and still be okay. Yes,
Do they have to list anywhere what has a higher percentage or no? If they just put like the collective term?
it's on that collective term right here. So that says that grain products, one or all 5 of those.
Okay, so they don't have to.
No, as long as I have this, I can use any or all of those. Okay? Now, we talked about corn. If we had 1 week that product was high in corn, and then the next week it was high in rice, would that throw anything off? It could, what's the first cereal that we give little ones? Rice. Why?
Easy digest.
Allergies, easy to digest, right? So if your horse is used to getting products that are high in rice, and then all of a sudden they get high corn, not only is it going to have an effect on the starch and sugar level, but it could have an effect on the digestibility depending on how that grain is processed. Okay? We looked at roughage products. I can use any and all of these in my roughage products. Soybean hulls. How many of you feed soybean hulls? Have you looked at your ingredients on your feed tag? I should have prefaced that. Have you ever looked at them? Okay. Soy hulls. Is that a good thing?
Doesn't sound good.
It doesn't sound good? It's actually great. It is a soluble fiber source. Soybeans are excellent for horses, high in essential amino acids, so the lysine, threonine, methionine that are important to horses. Soybeans are high in those essential amino acids, but that also provides a digestible fiber source. And you'll see a lot of these added to senior horse diets that need that digestible fiber because the horses might not be able to get as much pasture or hay in there. So soy hulls are great. What about this guy right here, beet pulp? Love beet pulp, right? You can, if you're not a fan of beet pulp, jump on the beet pulp bandwagon. It is a great source of fiber, but we can also use it as a concentrate too. Some of our higher fiber feedstuffs will include a lot of beet pulp in there because it's very digestible and it's very nutritious. What I would not like to see is this guy right here, rice hulls. One, not digestible to the horse at all. Zilch. If I get too much rice hulls in it, Impaction City, you're going to Columbus, up on the table, okay? But there is a time when we can utilize rice hulls in our premixes. So our vitamins and minerals, the premix that we use to make those products, we will utilize rice hulls as a carrier simply because it doesn't interact with any vitamins and minerals and it's not digestible to the animal. And it's going to be in at a low inclusion rate just to increase the amount of volume that product would go into. Because we don't put a lot of vitamins and minerals in our feedstuffs. We put just enough to make sure that we have everything that we need. So if you saw rice hulls listed as like the second ingredient, I might be a little concerned about that product, okay? But if it's in here as roughage products, how would I even know? I wouldn't, would I? So you're hoping that somebody that's half as smart as me knows not to put that in there, right? Counting on me to do my job. All right. Let's see, forage products. We can use dehydrated alfalfa meal. That's great. Ground alfalfa, dehydrated silage. All of that goes into forage products. Processed grain byproducts. Those sound like really scary things, but it actually includes some really good stuff. Wheat middlings, rice bran, distiller's grain, brewer's dried grain. All of those are good raw materials that bring some sort of nutrient to that animal, and you would see those listed on a fixed formula product. So let's compare feed tags. Here's feed tag number 1 that we just looked at. Okay? Here's feed tag number 2. Which one do you like better? Why? It tells you exactly what's going on in there, right? Okay. The thing that, I'm running a little bit over, so the thing that's important, if it's printed on the bag, that's a great thing. If it's printed like this on the tag, the feed industry's gotten pretty smart. We can print a tag every time we run it. So if you have a tagged product that's listed like that, collect a few over a course of time. And look to see what happens to those list of ingredients. Do ingredients jump up and down in their list of inclusion rate? Because sometimes they will. And that would tell me that it's a least cost formula and I wasn't paying attention. Okay? Some of them are really slick about doing that. But typically if it's tagged, for the most part, it is a least cost formula. Okay? So let's look at economy versus premium. I get that a lot. I just want the cheapest bag I can get. I hear it all the time, and it's okay because my horses are on a mill mix at home in Oklahoma just because it's the easiest thing that's available. I'm feeding yard ornaments, and I'm smart enough to know what I have to balance that with, okay? And there are times when, if it's between buying an economy feed and not feeding my horse, I'm going to buy economy feed, okay, because that horse needs to eat. So let's look, the first thing, economy versus premium, is ingredient quality, okay? I have down here soybean meal versus shoe leather. You think I'm kidding, right? My GA just says I need 12% crude protein. I don't tell you how I get it. I can grind up shoe leather, run it through the machine and tell you what the crude protein is of that. And I can get 12% crude protein by having shoe leather in the. Is shoe leather good for my horse? No. Soybean meal good for my horse? You better believe it. Okay? So that's why you got to know what's in it. Least cost versus fixed. So you've got the changing versus the constant formula. And then feeding rates. The one thing that gets lost is how much do I have to feed every day? Okay? How many of you like to feed a lot of feed? Should I quantify how much is a lot? How many of you like to feed over 10 pounds a day? How many quarts is that? It's probably 2 to 2.5 scoops twice a day.
Yeah, we do.
Okay.
Doesn't it depend on the type of horse?
It does depend on the type of horse. Now we're all starting to think. That's what we have to do. We have to think. As horses work, they require increases in nutrients.
And the breeds.
Some of the breeds do have. Horses in general all have the same requirements. Some horses by breed are easier keepers or hard keepers than others. Okay? So knowing what type of horse we're feeding is one thing that gets lost. We're like, I want a $9 bag of food versus a $30 bag of food. Okay? And I'll show you what happens next.
You have a question.
Okay.
Say you have an average sized horse and he's an easy keeper and let's say he's getting maybe a half in the morning and half at night. And the horse in the stall next to him is getting a lot more. Would the easy keeper be getting his requirements of minerals and all of that because it's a smaller amount?
The question is, can everybody hear her question? No. The question was, if one horse in the stall, average weight horse, is getting a little bit, and the horse next to him in the stall is getting a lot bit, is the horse that's getting a little bit getting all the nutrients that he needs? My question to you is, what is the minimum feeding rate for a horse that is that size? Which chances are you're not feeding that. So if you're not feeding that recommended feeding direction, no, you're not meeting that horse's nutrient requirements. So if your horse is getting fat on air and you're feeding him a quarter of a coffee cup or a quarter of a scoop a day, chances are you're not feeding the appropriate feed for him. So you would use something like a ration balancer that is meant to be fed at 1 to 1.5 pounds per day, and that's it. He gets forage. So that's what you would have to think about is, if I have to feed less than what's recommended, am I feeding the appropriate product? Okay. Question.
Doesn't it also matter how much you work with horse?
All of that is played into that feeding direction. So if you have a light work horse and you're not feeding that minimum requirement, then we need to go to a product that is better for that animal.
So a whole different product. So
It could be, yeah. If you're feeding like a pound of it and the recommendation is 5 pounds, then yeah, that's probably not the right product for him. It's probably too calorically dense, and then you would need to feed something else, okay?
Can you get it in a supplement though, or just another feed?
It depends. The ration balancer is out on the market, and we make one, it's called Grow and Win. It's designed to provide essential vitamins, minerals, and amino acids in a low-calorie formula. And so, for those air ferns, that's what we do, is we give them a pound to a pound and a half. That covers most of our 1,000 to 1,100 pound horses. That gets all of the nutrients he needs, minimal calories.
What's it called?
Our ration balancer is called Grow and Win. And if you go to packet, there's some product information in there as well. Okay, so based on all of these, that can lead to increased cost both in performance of that animal and the price that you pay per day. So let's look. I did an example of how feeding rates are important. $9 bag of food, $17 bag of food. And this is usually where horse owners are like, I don't want to know how much it costs me to feed my horse. But we have to pay attention. How many of you are on a budget? I'm on a budget. Okay, I need to make sure that I'm spending my money wisely. So, this tells me, oh yeah, I'm saving money, right? It's 18 cents a pound, because it's a 50-pound bag, 9 into 50. I'm totally out of time, so I'm hustling. And then our $17 a bag feed is 34 cents a pound. Has anybody ever done an exercise like this? How many of you are going to go do it when you get home? Okay. Now, we know how much we paid for it. Now we have to look at how much we have to feed. For my $9 bag feed, I feed 1 to 1 3/4% of their body weight. So if my horse weighs 1,100 pounds, what's 1% of their body weight? 11 pounds. So I did right in the middle, a pound and a half. So that's, or 1.5%, so it's 12.5 pounds per day. Okay? Whoops. That gives me 12.5 pounds that I have to feed every day at 18 cents. It costs me $2.25 to feed that $9 a bag food. Okay? Now let's look over here on the other side. The feeding rate for my $17 a bag food is 0.5% of their body weight. Okay? 1,100 pound horse in light work, 5 pounds per day. Total cost, $1.70.
Very interesting.
Yeah, you're all like going, holy crap, I didn't know that. Okay, let's look for our maintenance horses, which is what mine is. My 3 semesters of college tuition. High quality feed can save you money. Don't get caught up on this. Make sure you pay attention to this right here. Feeding rate. Okay, so for my maintenance horse, I decided to upgrade and went to $12.50 bag feed. Okay, 50-pound bag, it's 1/4 per pound. We threw in our Grow and Win, and on average, a bag of Grow and Win, if you went up to Cashman's or somewhere like that, cost you around $30, $31 a bag. Okay, so how many of you are panicking? Going, I gotta buy a $30 bag of food, right? Okay, hold with me. 62 cents a pound. I'm feeding rate for my maintenance horse is 4 pounds for that 1,000-pound horse. Gives me $1 a day. Ready with me? Now let's go look. Feeding rate for this ration balancer for my 1,000-pound horse, he needs a pound a day. A pound a day at 62 cents. It says it costs me 62 cents a day to feed that horse. Okay, and that's just in grain. Okay, is everybody with me on how feeding rates can impact the amount of money that you spend? Questions on that? Yes, sir.
When people feel better giving their horse 4 pounds versus 1 pound?
That is my other friend. I am mean and nasty in my life. If you ask all my college students, they will tell you that. Big, mean, and nasty lady. I don't give my horses treats, and I don't like to feed a lot of grain. Okay? That's my mentality. So this pound a day would be great for me, because I want them on as much forage as they can get, because forage is good. They're not doing anything. They don't need any additional calories. Come in with this ration balancer, bumps up the nutrition where it needs to be. I'm out of there, right? I do have a friend who lives in southern Ohio that I have tried for years to get that concept into her head. It doesn't go in at all, nor does it come out. So what I have done, or what has been done, is I take that mentality and I figure out how do I get more fiber in so that I increase the volume of feed fed and still get the same nutrients. So for her horses that don't need anything, and she can't feed 1 pound, 1 coffee cup twice a day, or 1 coffee cup twice a day, she needs to feed a coffee can. She gets on Safe and Easy because same nutrient density, just low calories, bigger volume. So for those people who have to do uno scoopy dose scooping, you have a product that's just perfect for you. If your horse is starving and it's just crying out to you that they haven't had enough to eat, it's kind of like my brother. I'm hungry. He just ate 5 minutes ago. Then we have products for you. Okay?
I thought horses didn't get volume. They don't, I was told they don't have a concept, like it's not like you're giving them half a sandwich or a whole sandwich.
No.
They don't have a concept.
No.
What they eat is what they eat, but they don't really know that they got screwed out of the other half of the
Right.
sandwich.
Yeah, that is, they don't know that, you know that. You know I only fed you a half a can. Oh, I really should have fed you a whole can, but today you're getting a little tubby, I'm gonna feed you half a can.
Yeah, but that's because we ration. Like, if you put a horse on strict forage, they will eat only what they
They
want to eat to capacity. Like,
Right.
it's a learned behavior, so.
We have, horses are designed to eat small meals frequently. They have a percent dry matter that they consume. Most horses, if they're turned down on grass, eat anywhere from 2 to 3% of their body weight in forage. Okay, so 2 to 3% of an 1,100 pound horse is 22 to 33 pounds of stuff a day. Okay, we have made them meal feeders because we've invited them into our world. They still have that same forage requirement. Now, because we go to work in the morning and then they come home in the evening, we've made them meal feeders. So ideally, horses would eat small meals throughout the day. And so we've conditioned them to do that. So, and they don't have a satiety factor. Like we eat, we get full, we feel sick afterwards. Horses don't do that. A lot of times they can eat until their stomach ruptures. Okay? They just don't have that satiety factor. So bottom line, when we think about how much our feed costs, make sure we add all related costs. So it's not just the bag of food, it's the supplements that we add on top of that. All go into price per head per day. So if you buy that $9 bag of food and then I spend $100 on supplements, you have to add all of that in so that you can figure out a true cost per day. Okay? Weigh your feed so that you know that you're feeding the right amount at least once. Weigh it so you know what a scoop weighs. Then look at your ingredients, not just quality, or not just the guaranteed analysis. As an industry, we've done really good at telling you the GA, essentially crude protein, is the most important part of the information that we give you. So that's our onus as an industry. We created that monster. But look to see what types of ingredients are in there, how many of those essential nutrients are in there, not just the GA when comparing feeds. Feeds, we've already kind of beat this to the ground. Feed them according to the directions, and if you have to feed less, call a nutritionist. They'll help you figure out what you need to do to make sure you're still meeting that horse's nutrient requirements. Okay? And then the last thing, low price per bag doesn't necessarily mean you're going to save money. Okay?